Hello, ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond. My name is Taylor, and welcome back to Table Tested. Today, we're going to be testing out Deck of Haunts, a brand new horror-inspired deck building game where you actually play as a haunted house. A haunted house whose entire goal is to murder or make insane anyone who enters it, whether they be adventurer, explorer, cop, priest, basically everyone and anyone who enters your front door, or any other door for that matter. Now, this is a relatively new game that released on May 7th, 2025. I was gifted a review code by Press Engine, so thank you to Press Engine for that, as well as the game's publishers, Dangan Entertainment and Game Source Entertainment. So thank you all for the review code. As per usual, will not let that affect my review, so let's jump into it proper. As I said earlier, this is a deck-building horror game where you play as a haunted house. The idea is you either need to kill or drive insane anyone who into your space, shall we say. Now, you do this through a series of cards, would you believe, that either cause damage to their health or cause mental damage to their sanity to make them go insane. You may be familiar with this concept due to other board games or tabletop games such as Betrayal at the House on the Hill, or other related games that don't come to mind at this moment. So, you might be thinking, okay, those are rather mechanically complex games. Does this one have similar complexity? Yes and no. So the idea here is that it's a deck building roguelite where you need to get through 28 nights, and I'm not sure what happens at the end of it, I didn't get that far. But yeah, if you can make it through all 28 nights with predetermined kind of encounters and bosses along the way, you beat the game. Congratulations. And to do that, again, you can either cause physical damage to your victim's health or mental damage to their sanity. So I'll start with physical. This can be things like bleeding, like having people get attacked or do other things. And when their health reaches 0, they leave a dead body. Now, this is important because if you leave a dead body in a room, one, it does not count as a living person being in that room, and two, it means that if someone enters a room where there is a dead body, they will typically, and I'll get into this in a minute, get scared and run out of the house. Now, every visitor, shall we say, is able to move one room per turn. So, you play your cards. When you run out of AP, they move into the next room, and you can see what room they're going to move into because it will highlight the door that person is going to enter. So, if someone comes across a dead body, they freak out, and then they typically will try to leave, given that, someone just died. Now, you get essence for this, and I'll get into what essence is in a moment. You get about 30 per kill, at least from what I was able to kind of gather. The other type of damage you can do is mental damage or insanity damage, and this will, as it says, drive people insane. They'll kind of sit down on the floor, get into a fetal position, rock back and forth, and just kind of murmur to themselves. This effectively takes them out of play, meaning that they won't move, they won't try to run away, they are effectively dead. However, they will not scare away other visitors into running away. They will also still count as a living body in that room. Now, the reason I mention this is there are some cards that will say target a solo human, meaning that if someone sane enters a room where someone insane is having a mental breakdown, you cannot target the sane individual with that card because they are not a solo human. This also works for traps and other rooms that will deal more or potentially less damage depending on how many people are in there. So, driving someone insane has very different effects, gameplay-wise, to killing them. The other thing is, you can still kill them. You can bring their sanity down to 0, have them, break down on the floor, and then still try and kill them for additional essence. Now, you get about 30, like I said, from a kill, as far as I can tell, and 25 from driving someone insane because you're not actually taking their life, so to speak. I believe it's up from 25 if you drive them insane and then kill them, but I don't think it hits a full 55. I can't quite remember. Anyway, you then spend this essence on additional cards or additional rooms/room upgrades. So after each night, provided you don't lose, you are able to add rooms to your layout. Now these comes in 3 flavors. You have the kitchen, the guest room, and the living room. Now there's not a whole lot of difference between these. It just means if you put, say, a kitchen and a kitchen beside each other, they merge into one room to become just a larger extension of an existing room as opposed to 2 separate rooms. So, but if you put a guest room, a bedroom, and a kitchen beside each other, sorry, living room, bedroom, and kitchen beside one another, they are all treated as 3 separate rooms with 3 separate doors. So you can add on to existing rooms to make them larger, you can move things around. There's a lot you can do here in this nighttime phase that I didn't really delve into because I didn't fully understand it. I kind of learned more afterwards just how complex and how much you could really strategize with this system. Now I mentioned room upgrades. There are a number of cards that you can pull night on night that may change or alter a room into a different type of room. So let's say I have a kitchen, I could turn that into a torture room, I could turn that into a vine room, I could turn that into any number of rooms. Now, as far as I can tell, these upgrades don't care what the base room is. What they do care about, however, is how large that room is. Typically, they'll want a 4 square, a 2x2 grid room to then change into this new type of room that might deal additional damage, whether physical or mental, or have other effects. Now, there are certain cards that you can upgrade some of those alternative rooms, so you would need that specific base room, but the base rooms do not care about the original form of the room that you are altering. I apologize if I said the room so many times it stopped sounding like a real word. It's just kind of what it is. So this is actually where essence comes back into play. I told you I'd bring it back. So to build new rooms, you need to spend essence. And those rooms are going to cost different amounts. One factor being how far away is it from either the entrance or the heart room. Another factor being if it's connected to the same type of room or a different type of room. So what I notice is typically if you want to place, let's say, a kitchen next to a living room or next to anything that isn't a kitchen, will cost you 50 essence. Whereas if you were to put a kitchen with a kitchen, costs you 5. Now there are a couple factors that I notice, again, go into it based on distance and other sorts of things. So I have had rooms say cost 25, even though they're not next to a room of the same type. But you need a lot of essence to build a lot of rooms, and then you need at least 50 essence per upgrade that you want to apply to those rooms. Now, you only get roughly, let's say, 2 upgrades per night that you can apply, costing 50 each, so that's 100 there. Let's say you want to build a new room, 50 to start, let's add on 3 more to make a 4x4, to make a 2x2 square. That right there is another 65, so you're looking at 165 essence for one night for some basic upgrades. That's a lot, and that's before we get into the more complex upgrades, which can cost up to 100 essence, possibly more, and upgrading cards, healing yourself. There's a lot that essence can do each night, and it makes it even more important that you try to maximize how much you're getting through driving them insane, killing them, and making sure they don't escape. What I didn't realize, though, is you can move every room in the house except for the entryway and the heart room. Now, I haven't really mentioned the heart room because it's a very basic mechanic, the idea being if someone enters the heart room at the typically end of your abode, of your mansion, you take 1 damage for every person who enters that room. So once they enter, you take 1 damage, they stay in the heart room for that turn, and then on the following turn, they will leave the heart room and try to escape the mansion, at which point you can either try to drive them insane or kill them. I forgot to mention this. When a visitor escapes, they don't give you anything. They don't harm you, thankfully. They only harm you if they get into the heart room. But they don't give you anything either. So if they escape, they are effectively a lost investment. Even if you've done health or insanity damage to them, that doesn't matter if they're able to get out the front door. Now, as I say, you cannot move the heart room. What you can do, though, and what I only realized after looking up a guide that John recommended for me, by the way, I will link John's video for this game down in the description below, as well as this guide, because it was very helpful, or would have been had I looked at it before I actually played. You can move the rooms in any configuration to still create a long, kind of winding space to get to the heart room. And my biggest issue that I encountered personally was I was kind of expanding outwards. I was making my house wide without getting really tall because I didn't want to give more access to the heart room. The problem is, with me going wide, as you'll see in the video, is it doesn't really delay the visitors as much as I want it to. It just kind of gives me more space to work with larger rooms that don't really have a positive effect. So I'm going to put on screen a picture from the guide that I'm talking about and how they moved all of the rooms to make in a completely different shape for the mansion to then give these visitors a very guided and expected experience so that you can better control where they're going, how they're entering your abode, and what you can do to them as they do so. And it was really interesting that it offers that kind of mechanical complexity that I just never really got, and that wasn't necessarily tutorialized to say, hey, you can do this, by the way. Speaking of the visitors, they grow in complexity as the game goes on, so they will get different traits, such as cops can shoot locked doors, so then they can't be trapped in a room for a turn because they'll just shoot it open with a pistol. You will have some visitors who will be able to enter the mansion from different rooms. So normally they would come in from the front entrance, but if they have, I believe it's the explorer trait, they can come in from a completely different room, potentially closer or further from your heart room, and can cause a lot of headaches. You have some that will recover psychic damage over time. You have priests that I have not encountered because I didn't get that far, who may be able to heal psychic damage or potentially physical damage in the later parts of the game. Now, what's nice is there's an in-game calendar that you see every night that shows you, okay, you're on night 1, 2, 3, etc., and you can see where new enemy types or new visitor types will be introduced, whether that be police officers, repairmen, clergy, and priests, to kind of see, okay, am I able to take on this challenge? Am I able to deal with this, and what do I need to do so? The way that works is you develop and unlock more cards over time. So for each run you do, you'll slowly level up this meta progression, unlock new cards. But the thing is, you can't select those cards at the start of the game, meaning you don't get to pick and choose what your deck looks like at the start of a run. You can choose the standard deck, a damage focused deck, or a drain deck. Sorry, drain is the terminology I should have been using for sanity damage. So you can choose a damage deck or a drain deck, or as I say, the default deck, and you have these new unlocked cards as kind of an option potentially to take at the end of each night when you do start unlocking, more cards for your deck. Now, I both did and didn't like this system. I always appreciate having meta progression. It makes me feel like I'm still working towards something in each run. My problem with this one, though, is that I don't necessarily think I'm going to see the cards that I've unlocked. Yes, I've unlocked them. Yes, I have access to them. But I don't get to pick and choose, those exact cards whenever I want. I get 4 options at the end of each night, and if I don't find the card I'm looking for, I'm just out of luck. So I do wish there was more of an option to select, okay, I want, these 3 cards in my deck in addition to the regular ones at the start of a run, just to kind of break up the monotony, but also to make sure I can see some of the cards that I'm really hoping for in a specific run. I understand that might make the early game super easy and unbalanced, but it feels like, and this is just me talking because I haven't really gotten too far into the game. I haven't gotten past, I believe it was night 12. I just don't see a lot of the cards I'm hoping to that I've unlocked through the meta progression because I don't make it far enough into the game to be offered them, and because I just don't get enough options. So with all that being said, I played about an hour and a half of the game. I quite enjoyed it. I think it's a great time for those who kind of enjoy this sort of thing. It's an interesting take on the, deck building roguelike genre where you play as not necessarily the villain. I guess technically you're the antagonist more than the villain, but as a structure itself and how that changes the way you need to approach things. I would love to see this turned into maybe some sort of multiplayer game where you have someone controlling the visitors and kind of who they're sending out, and then, versus the person controlling the house and how the house gets to deal with things. I understand that's a completely different experience to what this is. I just think it'd be a lot of fun. Now, this game does retail for $25.99 Canadian, or your original equivalent. I'm assuming, I'm going to say like 24 US dollars, so whatever your original equivalent of that is. I would absolutely recommend this game. It's a lot of fun if you're into the more, horror aesthetic and kind of a simpler, just, I don't want to say calmer type of game, but a slower paced type of game where you can take your time and strategically decide, okay, where am I going to use what and when? With all that being said, this game has been officially table tested. Appreciate you everyone for sticking around, for listening to me ramble. If you did enjoy the video, please let me know. If you've played Deck of Haunts or are there any other kind of card builder roguelikes that you enjoy, let me know with those too. I don't really have a lot of experience with them, and I'd be curious to see what else is out there. I know the big ones like Slay the Spire and Monster Train, but that's really about it. So let me know how this stacks up against those kinds of games, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!